Christ is risen. Couple of things before we get into the Tower of Babel. It's a shorter lesson, so we have a little bit of extra time. Just kind of a little bit of a follow-up from last week, talking about the flood. This one not directly, but I just come across this painting by Ed Riojas, a Lutheran artist, I think in Michigan, this is stunning. You know the text from the hymn, God's own child, I gladly say it. And it's just a wonderful depiction of these people standing around the font, the baptized, standing around the font, although all in one direction. But here, I'll let you see just the wide variety of these people, of the baptized. I'm going to go here. A lot of different shapes and sizes and colors and characters, ages. You know, I love the one who's Jesus. You can tell that because he's got a hole in his hand, right? With his arm around him, and I'm guessing is a widow, perhaps. Someone mourning or someone sad. I don't know why that one lady's looking at us. I love this one. The old man with the little kid. And then those in white, those who, the baptized who are part of this multitude that no one can count, those dressed in white robes. A lot of little ones in that there too. Yeah, but then, yeah. Just kind of neat. And so like this painting, you can order it from him. Everything up from, it's very wide, from 3 feet wide up to 8 feet wide, if you want. Be kind of a neat thing. And I was looking around after I saw this, like, where could we put it? You know, where's a nice long or wide area? It'd be neat. All right. And then, so we had, or I kind of asked the question. I said, I don't know where, like those who had been to the Ark encounter in Kentucky, if they said anything about the potential, like, archaeology discoverings of an Ark. And there are people that have claimed, or places that there's 2 of them. One of them, I found video of Ken Ham. He's kind of behind the whole Answers in Genesis and the Ark encounter, and he talks about that. So I thought a little video that he made kind of explain.
Researchers in Turkey now claim they found indisputable evidence that the story of Noah's Ark was not a cautionary tale, but a verifiable historical event.
Noah's Ark has been found. Well, has it? We certainly don't believe it has.
We can rule out the Durapinnar site as being Noah's Ark. It is truly just a geologic formation.
That particular site has been researched carefully by our geologist, Andrew Stein, and other geologists and archaeologists. But let's consider this. The Bible says the Ark landed on the mountains of Ararat, not Mount Ararat, the mountains of Ararat. It doesn't specify which particular mountain. Now, there's a particular claim that there's a site at the foot of Mount Ararat that resurfaces in the news now and then, as it has been recently, to say, oh, this is the remains of Noah's Ark. But Dr. Andrew Snellen explains in his research that Mount Ararat actually is greater Mount Ararat and the lesser Mount Ararat. The greater Mount Ararat is a cone volcano, and it's a post-flood structure. In other words, it had to be formed after the flood because it sits on thousands of feet of sediment with marine fossils in it. So the flood had ended, the waters had receded, and this volcano started to erupt. And over time, with multiple eruptions, it formed what we call Mount Ararat. So even if the Ark had landed on there, it would have been destroyed anyway by all these eruptions. But the Bible certainly says that when the Ark landed on the mountains of Ararat, water still covered the earth to a large degree and hadn't gone down yet. And so it couldn't have been Mount Ararat because it was formed post-flood. Now, that particular structure that they're referring to, other archaeologists and geologists have looked at it and said, you know, there's similar structures in the area, and it's just a geological formation, not Noah's Ark. And it doesn't really matter if we find Noah's Ark. I had an atheist once tell me, look, even if you find a big boat on the top of Mount Ararat and drag it down the main street, I'm not going to believe it's Noah's Ark. They are already committed to believe the Bible's not true, therefore it doesn't matter what we find, we'll reject it. And I think we should be reminded too of Luke 16, the account of the rich man and Lazarus there. The rich man died in a place of torment, Lazarus went to be Abraham, and the rich man wanted Lazarus to go back and warn his 5 brothers about this horrible place of torment. And Abraham said to him, they have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. And the rich man said, hey, Father Abraham, but if I rose from the dead, they'll repent. And what did Abraham say? If they don't hear what Moses and the prophets said, they will not be persuaded if one rose from the dead. Let me give you an example. I met an atheist once who said to me, look, if there's a God, why doesn't he come out and show himself to us? Well, he did in the person of Jesus Christ, the God-man. He raised people from the dead, healed the sick, did all sorts of miracles. And what they do, they nailed him on the cross. We need to remember that this is spiritual issue. In 2 Peter 3, we read about people who reject creation and reject the flood. It says there that they are willingly ignorant, they deliberately reject. It's got nothing to do with the evidence. It's a spiritual issue. You know, I also want to express a concern that when we hear all of these claims that they found Noah's Ark, or found some remains somewhere, they claim it's Noah's Ark, and so on. There's been so many of these claims over the years. I think people sort of become more and more immune to it. The point is, we have God's word. We don't even need the evidence of the ark itself. We've got the evidence of the flood. Thousands of feet of sediment, the fossils, covering most of the Earth's surface. The evidence for the flood is so obvious, and yet the majority of evolutionists would mock at the idea of a global flood. The majority of scientists mock at the idea of a global flood. Why would they believe Noah's Ark could be found, and even if there was a big ship found, they would say, oh, that means the Bible's true. No, they wouldn't do that. They would reject the Bible, and they'd have some other explanation. Well, it's a spiritual issue. You've got to remember that. It's true. If Noah's Ark was found, it would be the greatest archaeological discovery of all time, I think. But you know what? We don't need Noah's Ark to convince us that the Bible is true. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Look around us. We can tell that there's a creator who made heaven to all.
So I think that his answer is pretty solid. But any observations that you have? Apparently, like that, there was a guy, showed a guy with a sign, so that must be somewhere at the Ark encounter. Must be a little explanation of this, what does get in the news. Anything else? A couple things. One, he mentions the evidence of the fossils, which is kind of crazy. So in El Paso, everywhere in El Paso has these rock walls. You know, the rocks from the nearby mountains. And they're kind of all in our backyard. We could find in some of those rocks, you can see shell fossils, like seashell. At 44,000 feet is the elevation of El Paso. There's no reason for there to be, but evolutionists or scientists will have some explanation of how there once was an ocean on top of 4,000 feet above sea level. They'll do that. The other site that commonly, or I don't know, this is the main one. So when they say Ararat, it's up here and there's a mountain, but I think that the name of that mountain wasn't always named Ararat from like biblical times. As more recently they identified that and named that mountain Ararat. Actually, from our lesson for today, we're going to hear about the people going east to Shinar, where they settled after the flood, and going east to Shinar, which is like Babylon, somewhere and then they go into the plain. So they were in the mountainous area, which would make sense from where they landed in the flood, and they go east toward the plain. Well, if this is Shinar, if somewhere down here is where, like the Tower of Babel, which would also make sense. The next story that we're going to have next week is the call of Abraham, who originates from Ur of the Chaldees. So down in this area, this is where Abraham comes from before he goes up to Haran and then finally ends up in the land that God promises him and leads him to. but that this is kind of the place where it would be a little bit surprising if they had landed actually way up here, and then somehow, because this is not east from there, if I understand direction correctly. So the other location, there's some other explorers who say they had found another kind of similar structure in mountains in Iran, and Mount Suleiman, I think it's called. I think similarly, like it's been pretty well, like there were some rock formations that looked like planks, and they had found some evidence of some petrified wood in this area. I don't know, and I think what Ken Ham says is doesn't really matter that we could find that, but that, I think that's a possibility, and that would sort of make sense geographically. The only problem is this area is not known as Ararat, and there's another name for that, and so I don't know.
Just like Mount Rainier, that's happening in our time.
Yeah, well, so like with volcanoes and how he talks about like the greater Mount Ararat, like it has changed even, like it's an active volcano. The mountains actually get higher. And like where it says like that site that they were looking at is at the foot of that mountain. And if that, because it says when it came to rest, the tops of the mountains hadn't appeared yet. So it makes it seem like it's landing kind of on the top of a mountain, and then the waters recede, and then they can start to also see the tops of other mountains. Well, actually in this area where those mountains are, those are like the only two peaks now. In this area, there's a lot more peaks. They make that point that would make more sense for them to land, and then all of a sudden peaks to appear. But you're right.
Change, go out and analyze.
Yeah. So I think just to say we've got the scriptures, and it's not contrary to the history and the geography of, Yep, Tristan.
Another thought I had too is we might not find evidence of the ark if they use the ark to build other things, planes or parts, or use it as a resource.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, you're not going to let that wood go to waste. I wouldn't. Right? Like, it's entirely possible they took that thing apart. I've never thought of that, but that makes a lot of sense too. Like if you come off that, like, we got to build shelter. We're going to find some wood. And up in the mountains, I don't know which, I can't remember which of the mountains, like, you're above the tree line. Like, if they would have to come down the mountain, I guess, but maybe they took parts of it. I don't know. Yeah. It would have been a lot for 8 people to carry. But, all right. It's useful for you maybe to see this map. I had talked about that last time. I tried to have you imagine a picture, and I can't remember what point we were talking about there. But kind of Bible lands. Those of you who have been in catechism who learned the map, you recognize the seas. This is the Mitten over here, the Black and Red Sea, or Caspian Sea, and the Black and the Red Sea, Caspian Sea, and Persian Gulf. We labeled all those and to the river. So what you want to see there is also notice the Tigris and the Euphrates River, and that between those two rivers, that's where you have this valley and this plain, very fertile land. This is, if you kind of start here, and then you end over here, and you have a crescent that goes like this. That's what's called the Fertile Crescent. It's this area, generally where there's not mountains and desert, but it's mostly, there's rivers and water in this area. Yeah. What else? Yeah, we're probably, so when we talk about here the Tower of Babel, we're probably talking, I've read that I don't know if Babylon is directly tied to Babel, if that name comes from that, but it's in this region anyhow. Okay. Today, these are how that divides up with the country. You see most of that in Iraq, Iran. Remember we talked about the possibility that site over here. The other site that he was talking about is in eastern Turkey. Okay. Let's talk about Babel, Tower of Babel. This is chapter 11. Remember, the flood was 6 through 9, so we get chapter 10. It's what's called the Table of Nations. So basically it lists the descendants of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and where they sort of settled. So that one's kind of an overview of where they end up, some of that where they end up after this. But we'll jump to chapter 11. I did print out some new copies for this new month of the next lessons from Steckhart. If you want, there's a few there if you want to have those to take. There'll be one correction I'll show you today. Chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. What language would that be? We would presume Hebrew. Doesn't tell us. This is earlier. Remember, the first 5 books of the Bible, written in Hebrew, are by Moses. So that's later on. Moses is going to write all of this. But we would presume that this is the same language. This is the original language. Doesn't tell us that. It could have been another language, and Hebrew is just one of these. I don't know. As people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the valley, or in the land of Shinar, and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." So that area wasn't a mountainous area, so they didn't have big rocks that they could break apart and break into and put together in buildings. So they'd bake the bricks out of the clay that was prominent in the area. They were. You'd find, like archaeologists will find evidence of this kind of building earlier in this part, earlier than, say, in Egypt, when eventually they do, but the pyramids and all of that. But this is apparently earlier. Make bricks and burn them thoroughly, and they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." They planned this. I know it doesn't say who is doing this. Do they have some kind of government where they're like, you got city planners where they're going to lay it, they've got this, or I don't know. Like how high up is this conversation? Like who had this conversation specifically? It makes me wonder. Or is this just commonly this is the way people thought, and they somehow did. But you had to, in order to build a tower like this, you'd have to have some. I was always amazed at that when you watch construction projects, just like the planning that goes into like how all the different steps that you need to do to when you're grading a road and you're like it seems to me like it would be very complicated, and you have a lot of preparation. You don't just show up and say, okay, where should we put it? Like you've got to have, you've got to know the grade. You've got to do all the surveying and the, laying. This requires a lot of coordination, for which language, a common language, would be pretty important. Although I've also worked where language was. I worked summer after high school in Minneapolis with a sod and landscape company, and I was maybe one of like 3 employees that spoke English well, and only a handful that spoke it at all. And like I'd drive because I had a driver's license, and I spoke English, so I talked to the homeowner. But they're doing all the work. I know green side up on sod, but like what else we're doing, I don't know. That was challenging. It was challenging to do work if you'd kind of do it by just pieces of words. Easy for that work to fall apart if you don't have some. But they come, let us build ourselves. But what for? let us make a name for ourselves. There's, right from there, I think you can see the hint of a pride. Because we're asking ourselves, we know the story, we know what God did and how God thwarted this whole project. But what was the problem? You build a tower, build a grain bin. You put up, or we build. God doesn't knock all of those down yet. What is it what was the problem of them saying, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens? And I don't know that they're necessarily saying, we're going to build this so high that we can, it's maybe a symbolic a little bit for we can get to heaven ourselves almost. Even though I don't know that that's what the language means when they say top. It just means tall, up high, higher maybe than anything. For what? For protection, perhaps. Maybe they were planning to live in it. Maybe it was for, I don't know what the purpose exactly of it. A city and a tower with its top, but it would when they say to make a name for ourselves, that compared to the other people around them, they wanted that to reflect on them. And oftentimes we do. We want the things that we build to reflect on us. Kind of wish that maybe, I don't know, there's almost a part where we wish we had that more. Say, people would care that much about the name that they have for themselves or their families, or the work that they do or something like that. But with its top in the heavens, let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. So this was also something they wanted to avoid, was being dispersed. See, there's a problem there. Because God had several times after the flood said, be fruitful and fill the earth. That the goal was not for them to stay in one place and build up everything in one place, but to fill the earth. As if this is where we're wondering, okay, God's seeing this as contrary to what he had instructed them. Lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. If we do that, then we'll be weaker. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. It's kind of an anthropomorphism to say that God came down and saw, like God couldn't see from heaven, but that God came down as if to inspect, see what they're up to. Like Adam and Eve, remember after they ate of the tree, the Lord God was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. God came to find them. To see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. This is similar also to in the creation account. You read, and God said, and it was, and he goes through, and then he gets to the creation of man and says, let us. You just see this insight into the counsel of God. So this sentence here is spoken to whom? It's like he's talking to himself there. The Lord God said, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And certainly that's true. The Lord knows what they are and what they are capable of. And he says, nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. And again, I think we might read that and say, well, what's the problem? Why would God want to stifle us and not reach our human potential? Why would that be a problem? Because humanly speaking, we'd think that's what should be the goal, is to live up to our full potential as human beings, to be able to do as much as we can. What's God at least hinting at so far? Not everything that we can do, we should do. I'd say that again. Not everything we can do, we should do. And I would suggest that we've seen that through history in ways that we don't know of whether God maybe hasn't come down and put a stop to it. But well, you know this. There are technologies that have destroyed many, many people. Things that we've developed. Some of them, for a while, we thought were really good, or we were really useful. We thought asbestos was really useful. What was it, insulation? You know? And then come to find out, or, you know, what was Agent Orange used for? And it was defoliating? Yeah. Turns out it did more than that. We have technology, some of that we maybe, you know, we could, what's the, I'm trying to think of, is an opera singer, the bass, who is, is a thing that was given to pregnant women. What's that? Is that it? Yeah, where it caused great birth defects. And there's this guy, he's like this tall, great singer, opera singer, but he's a short little man. And he suffered from that, suffered birth defects because of a medication given to pregnant women that, you know, how horrible that you thought we were helping. And you thought it was, you know, given by the doctor who's trying to help. Not everything is good. What of those things that we never discover? You know, isn't that possible that there are things that we never discover that they were hurting us? We never find out that they caused the cancer, or that maybe they never actually caused cancer. Maybe they did something. I don't know. Nothing will be impossible for them in God. Really, you would see then what is God by doing this? This is a great mercy to him that he would thwart this plan that they have. I should show our picture. All right. And nothing they propose to do will now be impossible for them. And I suppose maybe our leading minds or scientists might, you know, think that is the case. Is that true? That nothing that we propose will be impossible for us. I mean, we've done a lot of things. We've sent a man to the moon. We've cured things. We've done a lot of amazing things. Is anything impossible? To some degree, we maybe still think that. And I wouldn't say we shouldn't try. You know, like I remember recent presidents. Well, if you go back further, you can find presidents who say we're gonna defeat poverty. We're gonna wage war on poverty, and we're gonna fix it. Did we do that? We didn't. We didn't take care of it. I don't. Or that we're gonna almost like promising cures for cancer. If we just do this, we can. There is a bit of that. Well, I wouldn't say more than a bit of it. I think we're still infected by this human hubris. That if we just do everything. But this is God saying this. This is if I let him. He's created us magnificently with minds that can figure stuff out. And many of those things are for our good. Okay? Grateful for antibiotics. Although isn't it like in various circumstances where people wonder, did something like that cause something, else? People. Yep, and we're able to develop a vaccine to prevent that. Is there a limit? Or is everything that doesn't seem to? We have things that we haven't hit that limit. Like we keep on having these advances, but are we pushing that? Come then, let us go down. This is kind of like, let us make man in our image. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. And so the way that he does it is not by like wiping them out and, stealing their hammers or just wiping them out with a plague. It's an interesting way that he does this, is that he confuses their language, and the confusion, disorder when they can't communicate, which we understand. And we live in a world with many languages, and it's not always even, we have people that speak the same language, but we can't communicate, right? And we can't understand each other, or we talk past each other and all of this. Even within the same language, it's possible to. Let us confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. And there you have an example of God halting something, and to our way of thinking, like, again, limiting, pushing us down, like setting us back, right? And we've got, Google Translate, and we can, like we're going to undo it. We're going to fix this thing. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. And so when their language is confused, they give up. Some probably stayed there, but it never got finished like they had planned. It
That kind of happened in the United States when we started getting immigrants. They settled in a village, Norwegian, Swedish,
Mm-hmm.
German, but their languages were for everybody.
Right. And probably all the way along, like you had, because you had English-speaking immigrants first. Not entirely though, because the Mayflower was a Dutch settlement, right? So you had other, and I would imagine that they didn't immediately speak English even in those colonies right away. But then you had plenty of people coming from all over the place, having their own settlements with their own languages, and not very far away. So around here, where were the Norwegian towns? Those were Norwegian. Wood Lake was a German town, and was it all? I mean, I know the churches were definitely so yeah, your Rockdale would have been Norwegian. Yeah. And that works as long as you're not trying to do anything. And just they didn't do anything too much together. You couldn't. Although you've got you have the ability to. People have the ability to speak more than one language. And so it is possible for people to communicate. We lived in a border city for 9 years, and it was really impressive, actually, the way that you could go to the bank, and I suppose they would just guess by what color skin you have or how you looked, what you were going to talk to them in, because they would just go back and forth between English and Spanish. The teller, if you worked, say I was thinking at the bank, probably other places too, but I always saw it at the bank. They just going back and forth between Spanish depending on who's next in line.
Just the accent will change your ability to understand.
That's true too. You got plenty of English speakers down south that you might not be able to understand. and when we were down there, like I'd have people visitors come out of church, and they'd be like, Minnesota or Wisconsin. They would recognize that. One thing that we'll just note here is that we live, though, after Pentecost. And there's some degree, and this I believe is when we read this account in church on Pentecost Sunday. So we read the confusion of the languages, but on Pentecost, what does God do? God there, he doesn't eliminate the different languages, but he allows the apostles to speak in these other languages. And he allows the gospel, the word of God can be in other tongues. And people can hear the word of God And so, like, while we a lot of times will get frustrated by our inability to communicate something in one language in another, I've lamented like English just does not have the same things that German has, for example, and we just can't get the hymns quite right. But we can do it. It is possible. We have translators, and we have, we can communicate. And so the Bible, not written in English, and the fact that we can read and be confident, even if it's not perfect, because you've got not perfect translators, and it's may I say, even not perfect languages. I'm not sure that Hebrew is the perfect language or Greek is either, but to the words of God, the message of God is perfect. What he wanted to communicate, he did purely, but not in English first. So we're reliant upon many scholars and teachers to do that work for you so that you can read your Bible and say, this is the Word of God. But that is possible we know it's possible because of the miracle that God gave at Pentecost to be able to, that the apostles could, that was miraculously in that, but we would say that is the work of God, or God gives that ability for that word to be done. Although it wasn't Pentecost the first time. The Bible had been translated, the Old Testament had been translated into Greek before Jesus' day. So there was already, in Jesus' day, the people knew the Old Testament Bible probably as well in Greek as they did maybe better than in Hebrew. So that work God had already given those gifts, even before Pentecost, but Pentecost is something special. And so as a result, the Lord dispersed them. We might say, well, that was a failure on man's part. No, it was the Lord spreading them out. Dispersed, and we know what that word means. There's a name for the spreading out of the Jews in kind of the New Testament times, called the diaspora, where Jews from, and some of it had the result of the captivity. So Israelites had been taken in captivity from their home in Israel, in Jerusalem, and sent off to, the Assyrians destroyed the northern kingdom, but then Babylon, and so that's where you have like Daniel gets sent off to Babylon, right? And then some of them get to come back, but many of them don't. And so the Jews spread all over the place, and it's called the diaspora, this dispersion. And but you say, well, or in other times, Jews had to flee from one place to the other, and this spreading around. But here, what it calls is that this dispersion is done by the Lord dispersed them. And you could say the same thing about those other dispersions. When believers have to move from one place to the other, that is as maybe the result of persecution, or it's the result of captivity or some other reason. But you can see the Lord's hand guiding all of that. That if he's spreading out, maybe he's doing that on purpose. But the people involved think, I'm just going to move somewhere else because I can't work with these nut jobs who don't speak my language. You know what I mean? Like they think they're doing it for their own purposes, and they're like, I can get a better job over here, and you say, well, you back up and you say, well, that's the Lord's dispersing them for his own purposes. Disperse them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel. I don't even know what's a proper, Babel or Babel. I think I usually grew up here in Tower of Babel. I think Babel. I guess if I was to spell Babel, I would spell it B-A-B-B-L-E, as in babbling. But I think there's a connection between those. Not an etymological connection. I looked up in the dictionary the English word Babel, and it doesn't direct it to this. It directs in English to a Middle English Babel. I don't know. But it sounds similar, so we can get it. I think we understand it, even if it's not directly connected by language. The name was called Babel because the Lord confused. And so if you look at the footnote, this Babel sounds like the Hebrew for confused. Okay. The language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. The Lord dispersed them. The Steckhart has a quote that I'll share with you. It's talking about, so even now, in their dispersion, people we are spread over all the earth, all kind of different languages, yet still people display their old arrogant spirit. They erect proud buildings, invent ever new arts, and what they seek with them is their own glory. They storm toward heaven in defiance of God, the Most High. If you were to look in the booklet that I printed out, I mistranslated in here, or I didn't catch Google mistranslating it. It says they worship God. That's a very different thing than in defiance of God. They're trying to get to heaven, like God be damned. Like they're going to do whatever they want, no matter whether it's, which I think we find plenty of people, especially like in advancing technology and stuff like that, not considering like ethical consequences of what they're doing. Although I think sometimes those questions are raised, but eventually either they're viewed, they're downplayed, or they just said we have to do it anyway because we need to. The Oppenheimer movie regarding the atomic bomb, just the questions of whether we should do it or not. Should we be messing with that? With the potential, and they didn't know. They didn't. I mean, it was obviously like catastrophic, right? Damage done that was on purpose. But when designing that, did they know what would be the consequences, and would this actually then result in not just it? I mean, we still don't know the answer to that. We have a technology that could just pretty much destroy everything. And if those who lived through the Cold War era, that's a much more prominent question, but it's still there. The technology is still there, right? Is this going to be the end of us? Is the next World War going to be, we have the technology to do it, to destroy ourselves. Yeah.
There's a lot of times the government sways people one way or the other, and they're not necessarily Christian.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I mean, people will say, why did they drop the bomb on Hiroshima? Well, it was to stop the war that was developing.
So if we're going to do something like that, there's got to be like programming or a narrative, and that in a setting like that, like they're going to do their best to control it to.
And they're even, anyway, eruptions of mountains covering cities in our time.
Yeah. And so those kind of, yeah. And of course, so if you have something like that, people wouldn't be like, well, God destroyed this town, but we have more natural cataclysmic events that can stop to a whole bunch of things. Yeah, but the attitude that the spirit that led to the building of the Tower of Babel, like that does still exist. So that's maybe what we want to recognize. And we want to say that God should stop us, and actually we would want to pray that God would stop us from advancing our own, and especially where it is to our own glory and our honor. The purpose of human life on earth is not to advance the glory of mankind. We can recognize that, can't we? The purpose of our endeavors, our working together, our technology, our smarts, all of the things that we can do, is not to be for our own glory. And well,
So you have people trying to destroy it too. Twin Towers, for instance. That's the picture.
and I think some people viewed that as a slap to America, as if building towers that high was sort of tempting, and could it have been? It's like we're going to build it as high as we can. We can build it really, really tall. And for someone in this case, not Christians, looking at which is kind of ironic, in some ways. But non-Christians wanting to, and for whatever, not all Americans are Christians, for sure. But, looking at Americans and saying, we need to take them down a peg or two. While their causes, their reasons for doing that are their own, and it's their own fault, right? And I know some preachers get in trouble, and they should, like if you draw a line and say, this was God giving us a warning. But can it be a warning to us? Sure can. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be. Did the people at Babel know why they couldn't understand each other anymore? I don't think they knew what God had done in His own counsel. They're just living with this tumultuous thing where I can't understand any of you guys. And this is I wonder how that conversation, like, I could understand you yesterday, but now you're talking nonsense. This is gibberish. What are you? You just sounds like you're I can't understand you. But they didn't know why. I would guess. They think someone mixed up your pills. Like I have no idea what happened to you, but you're not making sense to me anymore. I don't, did they say, oh, yep, we repent, we were arrogant and proud and seeking our own glory, and we should not have failed to listen to the word of the Lord. The Lord will have His people do what they ought. I think there's plenty of opportunity, plenty of things that we could see in our world, and we say, why doesn't God come down? Look down and say, these people are not doing what He said. Why doesn't He make them do it? If you're ready for that, because He'll say that to you too. Because we want to look at all the bad stuff in the world and say that He would and should do that with me too. Another thing that with this, it's this unity, and we love that. We love that idea of it, that what if, what man can do, we can do if we do it together. That's, where did I hear that recently? We got to stop the divisions among us because, if we're going to accomplish something as a country or as a community, we have to have. But if that unity is just unity in pride and arrogance, that's not good either. Division and hatred is not good. But neither is, well, let's get along so that we can make a monument to ourselves. neither of those honor God. And that God should, who knows what God has done, actually, what things, and again, like we said, we look and see they may have a human involvement for their own reasons. Maybe they want to knock down the towers for their own false religious views or whatever it is, that God works through to say, don't go there. The things that he frustrates, things that we would like to do, but we just can't do because the Lord knows that it wouldn't be good for us. There are things that we've done well-intentioned. I think of technology, well-intentioned in order to allow people to have children, that ends up destroying a whole lot more than it creates. Well-intentioned, but results that were, either ignored or cast aside and said, those don't matter, those are just embryos. And we bought the lie. But interestingly, the Lord he didn't thwart that. He didn't stop that yet. Strange to get done without rushing at the end.